Mafia boss's son rejected the food cooked by all, except the one cooked by the waitress. That morning, when I stepped into La Verità, the air was heavy with the scent of dark espresso and toasted bread. It should have been comforting, the smell of warmth and routine, but instead, it carried something sharp beneath it, a warning. I pulled the apron tight around my waist, the fabric soft and thin from too many washes, much like me, faded, tired, nearly worn through. 6 months working here, in the most prestigious restaurant downtown, and I still felt like an uninvited guest at someone else's table. The heavy doors swung shut behind me, and Marco's voice cut through the quiet like a blade. "You're late, Lena." He clutched his clipboard like a shield against whatever storm was brewing. I opened my mouth to apologize, but his eyes darted toward the kitchen, where there should have been the clatter of pans, the rhythm of knives, the hum of organized chaos. Instead, there was silence, the kind that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. I turned to him, my voice barely above a whisper. "What's going on?" He swallowed hard, lowering his tone. "The boss is here, and he brought his son." I froze. For 6 months, I'd only heard the name Gabriel Moretti in murmurs. A man who could turn any chef in New York into a legend or a ghost. His name shimmered in gold letters above the entrance, yet no one had ever truly seen him. Some said La Verità was just a front for darker dealings. Others swore they'd seen black SUVs parked outside past midnight. I used to laugh off the rumors, until today, when those 3 words, "the boss is here," made the laughter die in my throat. "His son's been sick," Marco continued, fear flickering in his eyes. "Hasn't eaten in days. Gabriel's furious. Every chef is trying to make something the boy will eat." The words sank into me like cold water. Everyone in this place knew. When Gabriel Moretti appeared, it was never good news. I made my way toward the pastry station, pretending calm. Though my hands trembled so badly, the sugar scattered unevenly across the counter. I told myself to focus, whisk the eggs, knead the dough, fill the molds. But every time the kitchen door opened, my chest tightened, bracing for the possibility of seeing him. The man people only dared to whisper about. The first sound to break the kitchen's silence was the crash of shattering porcelain. Then came the chef's voice, rough, furious. "No, he won't eat it." He slammed a spoon onto the counter, the metallic clang slicing through the air. Everyone froze. No one dared breathe. In a kitchen usually alive with noise and rhythm, only the faint simmer of boiling stock remained, mingling with the smell of something burnt. Marco stepped in, his expression tight, sweat glistening at his temple. "The boss isn't pleased," he said, voice low but clear. "The kid refuses to eat anything." The head chef shook his head helplessly. "I've tried everything, chicken soup, risotto, even seared salmon. He just looks at it and turns away." I stayed in the corner, hoping to disappear. My hands kept slicing pastry, but my mind was miles away. From across the room, I heard Marco murmur, "Gabriel's losing patience." Just those words were enough to make the air in the kitchen freeze. When Marco turned, his eyes landed on me. Something flickered there, an idea, or maybe desperation. "Lena," he called, his tone urgent. I looked up. "You went to culinary school once, didn't you?" "Didn't finish," I admitted. "I dropped out halfway." "But you can cook." I nodded, still unsure what he wanted. He said nothing more, just pushed me towards the main station, where the chef stood surrounded by failed dishes. "Let her try," Marco said. The chef stared at me, disbelief plain in his face. A pastry assistant? You think you can do what I can't? I swallowed hard, unable to speak. Fear and something else, something fierce and inevitable, rose inside me. I took a deep breath, scanned the chaotic kitchen, and opened the fridge. Amid boxes of imported ingredients, I spotted a block of butter, a few eggs, and a half loaf of brioche left over from breakfast. Memories hit me all at once, my father, frail on the couch, hands trembling as I made the only thing he could keep down, soft, honey-soaked bread with warm milk. "Give me 15 minutes, I said quietly. No one answered, but they stepped back. I moved as if in a trance. My hands stopped shaking. I sliced the bread, spread butter, let it brown slowly on the pan. The aroma filled the air, honey, vanilla, warmth, the kind of scent that felt like comfort itself. I warmed milk with a touch of brown sugar, a hint of cinnamon, and watched it swirl to gold. When I plated the dish, Marco just stared. "That's it?" he asked, incredulous. I nodded. It's what my father used to eat when he couldn't keep anything else down. Simple but gentle. Maybe. I didn't finish, but I knew. This wasn't about feeding hunger. It was about feeding hope. Marco grabbed the plate and disappeared through the swinging doors, leaving behind an uncanny stillness. I stared after him, my pulse pounding. Every second stretched unbearably long. 5 minutes, then 10, then 15. When the door opened again, Marco stepped in, eyes wide, breath uneven. "The boy ate," he said. "All of it." I couldn't move. The room around me seemed to blur. Whispers started to ripple through the staff, soft as the hum of air. Then Marco's voice dropped lower, almost hesitant. "The boss wants to see you." Every gaze turned toward me, some astonished, some curious, some pitying. I untied my apron, my palms slick with sweat. As I walked toward the door leading to the private dining suite, my heart thudded so loud it drowned out everything else. Behind that door waited the man everyone feared to name aloud. And I, just a pastry assistant, was about to stand before him. I didn't know it yet, but the moment my fingers touched that brass handle, my life had already changed forever. I stood before the door to the private dining room, my palms icy and damp. The noise from the kitchen faded behind me, replaced by the steady rhythm of my heartbeat, loud, relentless. When my fingers touched the brass handle, its warmth startled me. It was real. I was really about to step into the world everyone else only whispered about. The door opened as softly as a sigh. Light from the crystal chandelier spilled over a long walnut table, glinting across polished glass and the dark sheen of the walls. I held my breath. At the head of the table sat Gabriel Moretti. He wasn't what I expected. There was no shouting, no theatrics. His presence alone bent the air around him, made the room feel smaller. The black suit fit him perfectly, crisp against his broad frame, the open collar of his white shirt revealing tanned skin. Nothing about him was ostentatious, but everything about him demanded attention. Beside him sat a boy, Eli. He clutched an empty glass of milk, a trace of honey glistening at the corner of his mouth. When he saw me, his dark eyes lit up. "You're the lady who made the sweetbread, right?" I nodded. "Did you like it?" Eli's grin spread wide. "It's the best thing I've ever eaten." A faint sound, half exhale, half hum, came from the man beside him. I looked up and met his gaze. Gabriel's eyes were dark, deep, flecked with amber, cold but mesmerizing. The kind of eyes that see too much. "You're the one who cooked for my son." His voice was low, rich, heavy enough to fill the room. "Yes, sir, I only—" "Sit down." I hesitated. It wasn't clear whether it was an invitation or a command, but something in his tone made refusal impossible. I obeyed, lowering myself into the chair opposite him, willing my hands not to tremble. Gabriel leaned slightly forward, fingers tapping the table in a slow, deliberate rhythm. "Do you know how many chefs have tried to make my son eat?" I don't." 13, he said, his eyes never leaving mine. 13 chefs, from New York's best to private ones flown in from Milan. None of them got him past 3 bites. And then you, a pastry assistant who never finished school, managed to do it. Do you know what that tells me? I shook my head, throat tight. He leaned closer. That you're not ordinary. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but another part feared he truly believed it. Gabriel reclined again, folding his hands. "From this day forward, you'll prepare my son's meals. No one else." The words hit like a verdict. "Sir, I'm just a pastry assistant. I can't—" "You made something he ate," he interrupted. "That's all the qualification I need." "I can't," I said, my voice trembling. "I have work here, and my father, he needs me." "He has Parkinson's." My breath caught. "How do you—" "It's my job to know everything about those who enter my world." His tone was calm, not boastful, just matter of fact. "I've arranged a private nurse for him, his medication, treatment, hospital bills, all taken care of." I stared at him, stunned. "You didn't have to do that." "I don't do things because I have to," he said softly. "I do them because I choose to, and because you did something no one else could." I opened my mouth to protest, but the words died as he rose. His movements were deliberate, measured, like a predator aware of its own power. He stopped in front of me, silent, studying. The space between us shrank until his presence filled every breath I took. "Look at me, Lena," he said, voice low, almost a whisper, yet impossible to disobey. I lifted my gaze. What I saw in his eyes wasn't just power, it was loneliness, tightly leashed and hidden behind control. "I'm not saying no to you," I whispered. "I'm just not sure I belong in your world." He tilted his head, a faint smile flickering, gone as quickly as it came. "No one's ever ready, but you'll learn. I'll make sure of it." Eli's small voice broke the tension. "You're staying with us, right?" The innocence in his tone made my heart twist. Gabriel didn't look at him. "She is," he said simply, like stating a law of nature. I didn't reply. In that instant, I knew every door behind me had just closed. When I stepped out of the private dining room, it felt as if I'd woken from a dream I hadn't agreed to have. The world outside, the clatter of dishes, the hum of voices, the scent of burning butter, all seemed distant, foreign, like I no longer belonged there. But within hours, I learned that Gabriel Moretti never said things he didn't mean. He had a way of drawing people into his world, whether they wanted it or not. That evening, just as my shift ended, a sleek black car pulled up in front of the restaurant. The driver stepped out, immaculately dressed, and opened the door. "Miss Lena?" I nodded, my pulse quickening. "Mr. Moretti requests your presence." I wanted to ask where, but something in the driver's expression stopped me. I went home first, my small apartment in the Bronx, and packed a few things. Some clothes, a worn recipe notebook, and an old photograph of my father. When I came back outside, the car was still waiting. its polished surface reflecting the city lights like liquid gold. We drove away from the noise of downtown, trading bright streets for tree-lined silence. I watched the blurred city through the tinted glass, torn between fear and fascination. I didn't know where I was going, only that somewhere deep inside, I understood. There was no turning back. When the car turned up a sloping drive, I saw it. The mansion. It rose out of the darkness like something from another time, stone, glass, and shadow. Hundreds of warm lights glowed from its windows, like eyes that had been waiting. The iron gates opened soundlessly. The driver murmured, "Welcome to Mr. Moretti's home." Gabriel was waiting at the entrance. Gone was the black suit. He wore a crisp white shirt and gray slacks, simple yet impossibly refined. When I stepped out, the night air was cool enough to make me shiver. He noticed. "You came," he said, his voice calm, deep, unsettlingly warm. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do now," I admitted, trying to sound composed. "Follow me," he said. It wasn't quite a command, but it wasn't a request either. Inside, the mansion stole my breath. Marble floors gleamed beneath chandeliers. The ceilings arched high like cathedrals. Paintings lined the walls. Servants moved silently, every corner precise, immaculate, too perfect to feel alive. He led me to a private kitchen lit with soft golden light. "This will be your space," he said. "Everything you need is here. If you require anything, ask Maria." The kitchen was a dream. European ovens, Japanese knives, spices from every continent. It should have thrilled me, but instead I felt a strange tightness in my chest. It was beautiful, yes, but it felt like a gilded cage. "I'm not sure I belong here, Mr. Moretti," I said quietly. I never agreed. He cut me off, stepping closer. "I've already arranged everything for your father. He's receiving the best care possible. Private nurse, full treatment, medication, hospital fees, handled." My breath caught. "You didn't have to." "I don't do things because I have to," he said, softly, but with an edge that made my stomach tighten. "I do them because I choose to, because you did what no one else could." I clenched my fists. "You can't decide my life for me." Silence stretched between us. Then a faint smile touched his lips, not mocking, but intrigued. "Perhaps not," he said slowly. But I just did. I wanted to be angry, but in his eyes, beyond the command and control, there was something unexpected. A loneliness so quiet it almost broke me. "Eli's waiting in the dining room," he said finally. "He refuses to sleep until he sees the woman who made his dessert." As we walked through the marble hallway, light spilled across the walls in soft gold streaks. Each step felt heavier, as though I was sinking deeper into his world, a world too dazzling, too dangerous, too captivating. In the smaller dining room, Eli sat at the table, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Miss Lena!" he exclaimed. Gabriel's hand rested on his son's shoulder, his expression softening briefly, just long enough for me to see the father beneath the power. Then it vanished. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice calm again. "You begin at 7. I nodded, afraid to ask anything else. When he left, the door closed without a sound. The silence that followed was vast. I looked around. The room was beautiful enough to steal your breath. But beneath the beauty, I heard something else. The quiet click of a lock, faint, final. In that moment, I understood. I was no longer the broke pastry assistant from the Bronx. I had stepped into Gabriel Moretti's world, a world where everything had a price, and freedom wasn't one of them. The first morning in Gabriel's mansion, I woke before sunrise. Pale gold light slipped through the thick curtains, painting faint streaks across the marble floor. I wasn't used to this kind of silence, not peace exactly, but the kind of stillness that feels like a rule everyone obeys. In the private kitchen, everything gleamed exactly as it had the night before. I began preparing breakfast for Eli: oatmeal with warm milk, slices of fruit cut into stars, soft scrambled eggs, simple, gentle, the kind of food I once made for my father. When Eli appeared, still in rocket print pajamas and half asleep, he blinked at the table and smiled. "Miss Lena," he murmured, "how did you know I like scrambled eggs?" I smiled, setting the plate in front of him. "I guessed. Looks like I was right." He giggled, taking careful bites. Watching him eat filled me with something strange, a quiet warmth I hadn't felt in years. The morning passed softly. I cleaned the counters, prepared a few things for lunch, while Eli sat nearby drawing. His small hand moved clumsily across the paper, sketching stars, airplanes, and a little house with 3 people inside: him, Gabriel, and me. "This is you," he said, pointing to a tiny figure with brown hair and a soft smile. "I put you next to Papa because he smiles when you're here." My heart skipped. "He does?" Eli nodded with the certainty only children have. "Papa never smiles at anyone, but he did yesterday when you talked to me. I saw it." Before I could respond, that deep voice filled the doorway. "Eli, you should eat a bit more." Gabriel stood there in a light gray suit, his tie loose, the morning sun tracing silver along his hair. He looked different, not softer exactly, but human. He sat beside his son, took a spoon, and fed Eli a bite. The boy laughed, mouth full, and Gabriel smiled, a real smile, brief but startling in its gentleness. I watched them, something tight in my chest, a father, a son, and me, an outsider somehow, allowed to witness their tenderness. Days began to find a rhythm after that. I cooked simple meals: vegetable soup, star-shaped pasta, vanilla pudding. Eli's appetite grew. His laughter filled the marble halls. Gabriel spoke little, but his eyes always found me. At first, I thought it was suspicion, that he was making sure I didn't make a mistake. But over time, his gaze changed. It lingered, slower, deeper, as if he were trying to read something inside me. Evenings often ended with the 3 of us at dinner. The tension of that first meeting had faded, replaced by an odd, fragile warmth. Eli talked about his drawings, I shared new recipes, and Gabriel listened, sometimes smiling, sometimes silent, as if the act of listening itself was new to him. One night, after Eli had been taken upstairs, I was clearing the table when Gabriel said quietly, "He's changed because of you." I looked up. He was standing by the window, glass of wine in hand, half his face caught in shadow. "I just cook," I said, trying to sound casual. "No," he said, shaking his head, eyes fixed on me. "It's not just the food, it's the way you talk to him, look at him, listen. He's not just eating again, he's living again. I see it every day." I didn't know what to say. His words warmed me and frightened me all at once. There was something in his tone that blurred the line between gratitude and something far more dangerous. When I turned away, his voice stopped me again. "Do you ever feel like you're being watched?" I froze. "Watched?" Gabriel set his glass down and took a step closer. "This house has many eyes, cameras, guards, necessary precautions. But sometimes," his gaze held mine, "sometimes I'm not sure if I'm the one watching or the one being watched? His words made the air heavy. I forced a faint smile. Maybe both. A shadow of a smile crossed his lips, equal parts amusement and warning. Maybe. That night, as I lay in my bed, his voice echoed in my mind, low, calm, and unsettlingly intimate. In that grand golden mansion, I realized something terrifying. It wasn't the hidden cameras or silent guards that made me feel watched. It was Gabriel Moretti himself, his gaze, both a shield and a trap. The days passed quietly, but the more familiar everything became, the more I felt something shifting, either in the house or in me. Fear had turned into curiosity, and curiosity into something I didn't dare name. Maybe it was the way Gabriel looked at me, or how his voice could turn every word into a secret I wanted to keep. That evening, while I was rearranging the spice rack, my phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen. Dinner tonight, wear red. No greeting, no name, but I didn't need to ask who it was. I froze for a moment, heart pounding, then glanced at the clock. 6:30. I had exactly 30 minutes. In the wardrobe Maria had prepared, there were 3 colors, blue, black, and red. I'd never touched the red ones, too bold, too unlike me. But tonight I had no choice. The dress fit as if it had been made for me, soft fabric, flowing like water, catching the light with every movement. I barely recognized the reflection in the mirror. Not the girl from the Bronx kitchen, but someone else entirely. When I stepped out, Maria gave me a knowing smile. He's waiting in the east dining room. I had never been there before. When the door opened, candlelight spilled across the ceiling, warm and trembling. The table was set for 2. A vase of white roses stood in the center, petals quivering in the faint breeze. Gabriel stood by the window, back turned. When he turned around, the light hit his face, half in glow, half in shadow, beautiful and dangerous, like a secret caught between confession and sin. "You came," he said softly. "Sit." I obeyed, gripping the hem of my dress to steady my hands. He sat across from me, eyes quiet but so piercing, I felt like he could read every thought. The table was simple, red wine, rare steak, fresh pasta. I was about to thank him when he spoke first. "Do you know what I value most in the people who work for me?" I shook my head. "Honesty." He swirled his wine slowly. "Not honesty in words, in eyes, in reactions. And you?" His gaze caught mine. "You're always honest, even when you try not to be." My voice faltered. I don't understand. You fear me, yet you meet my eyes. You hate being controlled, yet you stay. You know I'm dangerous, but you haven't run." He leaned back, the faintest smile curving his lips, teasing and yet almost tender. "Why is that, Lena?" I lowered my gaze. "Maybe because I owe you, because of my father." "No." His tone sharpened, cutting through my words. "You owe me nothing. I didn't help your father for gratitude. I keep what I value, and you," he said quietly, "are one of them." The air thickened, charged. I could hear the soft crackle of candle wax melting. His eyes held mine, heavy, unyielding, and unbearably gentle. "What do you see me as?" I asked, voice trembling. He stood, moving around the table slowly. When he stopped behind me, I could feel the warmth of his breath against my neck. The space between us charged with something fragile and dangerous. "You're the one who made my son laugh," he whispered. "The one who reminded me there are things money can't buy." I turned to face him. He was close, too close. His dark eyes flickered with something between desire and restraint. "Gabriel," I breathed, saying his name for the first time. Then he leaned in. The kiss came slowly, like a question waiting for an answer. I didn't pull away. It deepened, warm, consuming, like a storm, breaking after years of silence. I should have stopped him, but I didn't. Every thought dissolved, leaving only the ache of something both safe and dangerous, a pull I couldn't escape. When he finally drew back, his gaze stayed on me, dark and unreadable, carrying both promise and warning. "Don't make me regret choosing you, Lena," he said softly. I couldn't tell if it was a threat or a vow, but as I left the candlelit room that night, my heart wasn't the same. After that kiss, nothing would ever be the same again. The morning after that dinner, I woke with a weight pressing on my chest. The soft light in the room couldn't wash away the memory of what had happened. I'd let him kiss me, let that moment carve itself into me like fire that refused to fade. And I was terrified, not of him, but of how I felt. While I was preparing breakfast for Eli, my phone buzzed. The name Nurse Carter flashed on the screen. I answered, already uneasy. Her voice was urgent. "Your father, he's been taken to the ER, respiratory failure. We're transferring him to St. Vincent's now." The spoon slipped from my hand, clattering against the tile. Before I could move, Gabriel was at the doorway, his expression sharp, unreadable. "Let's go," he said simply. 10 minutes later, I was in the Bentley beside him, the city sliding past, in streaks of gray rain. He said nothing, his profile carved from calm and shadow. I tried to breathe, but by the time we reached the hospital gates, my chest was tight with dread. Everything moved as if already arranged. Nurses greeted him with quiet deference. A doctor met us at the VIP ward, speaking softly. "The room is ready. The treatment has been approved." I froze. Treatment? What treatment? No one answered right away. Gabriel's hand came to rest gently on my shoulder. "Don't worry, he's being given an experimental drug, a new therapy for nerve regeneration." My heart pounded. How? That drug isn't even public yet. He met my eyes. "Some doors only open when you know how to knock," he said softly. "I knocked for you." I should have been angry. He'd gone too far, into places of my life that were supposed to be mine. And yet, somewhere beneath the fear, I felt something dangerous, gratitude, protection, the fragile sense of being seen. "Why would you do that?" I asked, voice trembling. "It's not just because of Eli, is it?" He was silent for a long time. The rhythmic beeping of the monitor filled the room, marking my father's heartbeat like time itself. Then quietly he said, "Because you matter to my son." He paused, eyes never leaving mine. "And to me." The words hit harder than I expected, not loud, but absolute. They slipped through every wall I'd built, leaving me exposed and trembling. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. "Gabriel, I don't know what to—" "You don't need to say anything," he interrupted softly. "Just know your father will be all right. I promise you." As he spoke, his hand found mine, warm, steady, and just slightly trembling, as if the unshakable man I thought I knew was for once uncertain. I looked at him then, really looked. Beneath the power and control was something else entirely. A man who had lost too much, who still believed, against all odds, in saving what remained. Under the sterile hospital lights, with my father breathing steadily again, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. Gabriel Moretti wasn't just the man who had rescued us. He was slowly becoming the one thing I could neither escape nor let go of. When my father was finally stable, I sat by his bed for a long time, holding his hand. His face had color again, his breathing steady. I knew, without anyone saying it, that it was because of Gabriel. He had done more for us than I ever thought possible. By the time I left the hospital, night had fallen. Gabriel was waiting by the entrance, not in a suit, but a white shirt, sleeves rolled, standing quietly under the golden light. When our eyes met, something in his softened. "Walk with me," he said gently. The drive back to the mansion was silent, but it wasn't the heavy silence of strangers. It felt like a pause, the breath before something new begins. When we arrived, he led me through the gardens behind the house. The night was clear, stars mirrored on the still surface of the lake. He walked beside me, hands in his pockets. "I know my world isn't easy to accept," he said, voice low, calm as the wind. "It's filled with darkness, things you shouldn't see. Maybe we'll never understand, but—" He stopped, turning to me. "I can promise you one thing, you'll be safe. No matter what happens, no matter who threatens that safety, I'll stand between you and it, even if it's me." I stood there, silent, my heartbeat slow but deep. The moonlight traced his face, half light, half shadow. "Stay," he said softly. "Not as an employee, as family." I froze. That word, family, felt like both a question and a vow. I looked at him, this man who had once terrified me, then challenged me, then saved me. And now, somehow, I wanted to trust him. My father's voice echoed in my mind. "Don't be afraid of happiness just because it's complicated." Maybe happiness was never meant to be simple. Maybe it was worth the risk. When I opened my eyes again, he was still watching me, calm, waiting. I stepped closer, smiling faintly. "I'll stay," I said, voice trembling but firm. "Not out of gratitude, but because I choose to. I accept all of it, the light and the dark." Something eased in his expression, like a storm breaking after a long night. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside, a simple gold ring gleamed like a fallen star. "Then stay," he said quietly. "Stay as mine." Before I could reply, he took my hand, sliding the ring onto my finger with steady, reverent care. When I looked up, his eyes were already on me, deep, warm, and unguarded. The kiss that followed was different this time. Tender, certain, true. I could feel his heartbeat against mine, steady and real. The night wind carried the scent of jasmine, and the world around us seemed to fade until there was only this, his hands, his breath, his promise. In that quiet garden, beneath a silver moon, I knew I had chosen not just a man, but the truth within him. To accept Gabriel Moretti, both his light and his darkness, was to finally accept my own. A few weeks later, my life was completely different. Mornings no longer began with the rush of alarms or the clatter of restaurant kitchens, but with laughter echoing through marble halls. Eli was healthy, full of life, asking endless questions that made the house feel alive. He ran through the gardens, hair damp with sweat, shouting my name and his father's, as if afraid the world might forget how happy we were. As for me, I still cooked, only now each dish tasted not of fear or obligation, but of warmth and love. I set pastries on the table, watching Eli giggle as cream smeared his nose. And when I looked up, Gabriel was standing in the doorway, his eyes softer than I ever thought they could be. He was still Gabriel Moretti, the man who could make an entire city fall silent with a glance. But here, in this quiet corner of the world, surrounded by gold light, and the clinking of cutlery. He wasn't the boss or the king of anything. He was just a man who smiled when his son called him Papa, and reached under the table to brush his fingers against mine, as if to make sure I was still real. Sometimes men in dark suits still came to see him. Their handshakes were cold, their words measured, and in those moments I saw the shadow of the man he once was, the world of power, danger, and secrets I would never truly understand. But when he turned back to me, to us, and smiled, all of it faded away. That morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows, painting the breakfast table in gold. Gabriel poured coffee. Eli chattered about his dream from the night before. I sat beside them, listening, breathing, feeling that strange, full kind of peace that doesn't ask for anything more. In that moment, I realized happiness isn't about escaping the darkness, it's about daring to stay, even when you know it's complicated. I looked at Gabriel, then at Eli, and smiled. My voice echoed quietly inside me. Home isn't where you live, it's where someone truly sees you and chooses to stay. Outside, the wind carried the scent of jasmine through the garden, mixing with the sound of a child's laughter. The morning stretched, soft and golden, and though it felt like an ending, deep down, I knew it was only the beginning of forever.